Today we're talking about what to do when you nick yourself shaving. Now, whether you shave your face and your head or whatever you shave, you are bound to nick yourself and have a bleed. And well, today's video is really focusing on the things that you may have around the house, as well as things that you can purchase to stop that bleed. Now, I'd put a disclaimer out there for you. This is not medical advice. So if you use any of these methods that I talked to you about today, it's going to be on you. Now, we're going to start out with ways in the bathroom to stop the bleed, because that's probably where you're shaving at. The first way is going to be pressure. You know, it's good for deep cuts, little cuts, doesn't really matter. Pressure has always been a tried and true way to stop a bleed. And one of the ways to do that in the bathroom is, of course, with a little bit of tissue paper or toilet paper. And how you do that is very simple. If you cut yourself, you've got a little bleed, you take a little piece of toilet paper and you shove it on there and push on it for a minute or two until it stops bleeding, and the toilet paper will sit there and stay on its own for a little bit while you finish up cleaning up, and then you can usually just take it right off and problem solved. Now, I have found out that sometimes that little piece of toilet paper, if you leave it a little bit too long and you take it off, well, the scab comes with it and then you're right back to bleeding again. I've also found that if you forget to take one of these little squares off and you leave the house, it is quite embarrassing. Now, of course, you can always just leave your finger on your cut for a little bit, applying a little bit of pressure, and that will also stop the bleed, but then you're stuck there without use of a hand, which means that you're probably not able to get ready, so that's also kind of a bummer. So pressure is probably my least favorite way of stopping a bleed. The second way is alcohol. Unfortunately, not the fun kind, as we are looking at mouthwashes and aftershaves. Both of these usually have alcohol in them, however, there are non-alcohol ones, so just make sure that you are using ones that have alcohol in the ingredients, and it will help stop the bleed. Now, alcohol is an astringent, and astringents cause the contraction of skin cells and body tissue, which essentially means that that little cut of yours went from this down to this, and it needs less white blood cells to make a clot, which means you stop bleeding faster. Now, how do you apply this? You don't want to go dumping a whole bunch of it on the cut, as that would just waste the product. So therefore, you can go ahead and dump a little bit on a Q-tip or a cotton ball, and then just kind of dab it on the cut, and within a couple of seconds or so, you should see a reduction in blood flow, or maybe a complete stop. Like a lot of things on this list, the next thing is an astringent as well, and that would be aluminum chloride or aluminum zirconia. So where do you find these aluminum ingredients? Well, check your deodorant. There may be a couple other aluminum something names for it, and I'm thinking that they're probably all going to work right about the same. So how do you use your deodorant on a cut? Well, pretty simple. First off, you're gonna want to kind of wipe it off of there and just apply it directly to the nick. And within a few seconds to a minute, you should see a reduction in the blood flow. Now, moving on to a big word here, tetrahydroxylene, or however this word here is said. Essentially, the easy way, Visine, or pretty much any of your anti-red eye type drops should work, because they all work essentially the same way as an astringent, and if you think about it, they do a pretty good job of tightening up those blood vessels in your eyes. So I think this would be a pretty good option. Now, how would you apply a little Visine to a nick? Well, pretty simple. You would apply it to your cotton ball or your Q-tip once again, wipe off any existing blood that may be on the cut, and then apply it with those. So far we've been talking about astringents, and we'll get back to a few of those here shortly. However, there's another way, and that is a cover. Now technically, the toilet paper could be considered a cover. However, that's much more of a pressure thing, I think, than anything. To me, a cover is something like a Vaseline, a chapstick, and if you're like me and you have it around, some softer mustache wax. Now with a cover, what you're doing is exactly that. You're going to be covering the wound. So what you're going to want to do is take a little bit of that toilet paper, wipe off any existing blood, and you will be covering it with a waxy type substance. And what this is going to do is it's going to help keep that blood from leaving the wound, which then in turn makes it so that it can do what it does best and make that scab. Now most of everything that I have mentioned so far should probably be found in your bathroom. But did you know that there's stuff in your kitchen that can help stop the bleed? Yes, you heard me right. We are going to be going into the kitchen to take a look. Now the first thing that you're going to find in your kitchen to stop that bleed is going to be caffeine. Now I'm not saying to go over and pop open a Mountain Dew. Head on over to your coffee maker or your tea bags and grab those. The tea bags, it can be fairly simple. You just wet them down really good. Put them on your neck for anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, and it should stop the bleed. The coffee grounds, however, may be a little bit more tricky. You could probably just take some wet ones and kind of smear them onto the cut, and that should do. If you don't want to do that, well, just grab the whole filter, make a little bag, and plop it on there for, once again, that 2 to 5 minutes. Now we're going to be headed to the cabinets to stop that bleed. Now I've done a little bit of research on the next few products here, and there is a little bit of science that say that they might work, but some that says that it wouldn't work. And so if you try these, it really is up to you, as they are kind of wives' tale type things with maybe a little bit of truth to them. And that would be sugar, salt, and cayenne pepper. Now cayenne pepper is scientifically known to help thicken up the blood and give your blood a boost in all of those wonderful little white blood cells and other cells that it needs. So to think that this would be able to help with a nick, well, kind of makes sense. However, just to take this and apply it directly to a nick, I'm not so sure about, but people say that it works. So if you have no other options, you could always try your cayenne pepper and see if that'll stop the bleed. Now salt to me just seems like that it would burn worse than probably the alcohol would. But this one I can kind of understand, I think, because what you'd be essentially doing is you'd be removing any of the liquid out of the blood into the salt crystals, making a little bit of a cap, as well as condensing and making those white blood cells be closer together, and possibly making the scab a little bit sooner, because it doesn't have the liquid to flow away from the wound. So this one I can kind of understand, but I don't think that I would try it unless I had absolutely no other option. Now the sugar actually does have some science behind it, as there are a couple of studies out there that say that sugar has helped heal wounds. Now I don't know if that includes little dinky wounds or not, but sugar is on the list of things that people have said that they will put on their nicks to stop the bleed. So that's another one that you can always try out as well. Now before I tell you guys about the next products, I want you to go down in the comment section and tell me some ways that you know of to stop a nick from bleeding. If you're gonna be shaving, you're gonna eventually nick yourself, so be prepared. And how you can be prepared is with a few different options. One option is one of my favorites and my go-to, and that is a simple septic stick. Septic sticks are very easy to use. You simply remove them from whatever tube they are stored in, run them underneath a little bit of water, and then dab it onto where wherever you have nicked yourself. And within seconds, it will start to clot and stop bleeding. Now, one downside to a septic stick is that you will need to go back and rinse off any of the little chalkiness that will be left behind once it dries. Now, if you don't want to deal with having to remove the chalkiness later, you can get what is called an alum bar. Alum bars are really sold as kind of an aftershave wash to close up those pores. However, they can definitely be used to stop a nick from bleeding. And then you also have specialty gels and rollers as well. Now, both the septic stick and the alum bar, they're basically just mineral bars to act as an astringent, and the rollers and gels, they usually have a little bit extra in them, something like a vitamin E or aloe vera. Now, what do you do if for some weird reason you don't have any of this stuff available to you? Well, it's pretty simple. Just grab a rag or take a little bit of cold water. The colder, the better. And you can go ahead and put it on your nick, and that will also act as an astringent. Now, the colder, the better. So if you've got an ice cube, you can go ahead and just hold that to the nick as well. So you've used one of these ways to get the bleeding to stop. Do you need to do anything else? Well, if you're not using a septic stick and need to come back and wipe that off, you're probably good. However, I do suggest that if you're going to go to bed soon after, that you do put a band-aid on it, because believe me, there's no fun in accidentally scratching it during the night and then waking up with some blood on your pillow or on your blankets. So I do suggest putting a little band-aid on it. I prefer the littlest ones that come in these multi-packs, just because that way, if I do need to leave the house in a hurry or whatever the case may be, this isn't quite as noticeable as one of the medium to larger size bandages. To make things easy on you, I've left some links down below so you can pick yourself up a septic stick, an alum bar, or maybe even one of those rollers or gels. As always, if you got any questions or comments on this topic, please go ahead and leave them down below. Right here you'll find a playlist of some videos that I think that you may like, as well as a video down here that you'll probably enjoy as well. Until next time, as always, you have a good one.